All right, so today we're going to be making birds. They're pretty much the exact same first process for a paperweight until you hit your second gather. So definitely refer to our initial video on paperweights before watching this one if you need a refresher on that. I am doing an optic mold inside of this particular bird, so I'm showing that really fast just so you can see what's happening. It's going to be a pink bird in case you're wondering with optical ridges. You'll see it cooling down right there. I'm going in for my second gather at this point and getting ready to go. The biggest difference, and you'll notice this when I start blocking, is that we're using what we call egg blocks or bird blocks, which we do also fondly call them. Now you'll see I just got my second gather. I tilted slightly upwards to bring some of that glass towards the tip of my piece so that I get more glass able to be falling into that block. I start by blocking it out, and you'll see instead of getting that rounded dome top like we do with paperweights, these egg blocks actually encourage the glass to form this kind of point. This is going to be what we're going to be using to create the bird head as well as the general shape. With birds, the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to be putting in a jack line. You'll notice I came in at a slight angle. I was a little bit on the punty before I put in that jack line, and I wanted to conserve as much of my piece as I could. So I came on at a slight angle and then went straight back to vertical for a crisp, clean jack line. For the bird's head, then I go on at an additional slight angle, kind of letting my jacks rest on the shoulder where that curve inwards to the point starts to form, and I put in that jack line for the bird's head. You do see a little nubbin there. I could have spent a little bit more time blocking to get that nubbin off on the top, but because we're going to get this bird dumb hot, that nubbin will actually heat out. So once you have the jack line in for the head, as well as for the actual break-off point, you're going to get it as hot as you possibly can. You want it to be almost dripping from your punty. Then, when you get back to the bench with that super hot heat, you're going to grab your tweezers because that's what you're going to be using next. Let that bird fall completely off center, and then let gravity pull it down as you're pinching out those tails. Let it flip 180, pinch out that beak, plug in those eyes, and it's going to be a game of just letting it fall off center and letting gravity pull it down as you're pulling upwards to touch up each of those attributes. You'll see the tail forms and the beak forms pretty much straight across from each other. And then once you're happy with the features, you're able to put in your jack line. Once again, I'm going on at an angle to make sure that it's off the punty, but then working my way back up to a straight vertical so that I can put in a crisp and clear jack line. While you're pulling it out, it will create a little bit of an oval for the jack line instead of the standard circle that we're used to. So you may have to alternate your pressure as you're putting it in so that you can slowly cool it down, get it centered, as well as get it to be an equally distributed jack line. What will also happen is that you have some pretty thin spots where your tail is as well as where your beak is. So you may have an assistant come grab you a torch, or you already have a torch set up at your bench to reintroduce some heat into your bird since that core temperature is really high, whereas the tail and the beak might be getting pretty low. So flashing it every now and then with a torch or going straight back into the hole to keep heat in those two bits as you're cooling down that jack line, getting ready for break off, will be critical, especially because you don't want your bird to have the tail thermal shock off. Additionally, I'm keeping those jacks on our jack line. You'll see I'm pulling out a little bit, which I don't intend to do. It'll make it a little bit harder and pretty much make sure that I have to cold work it later on. However, keeping the jacks on there as long as I can in order to cool down that portion so the break off goes well is going to be important. Now I've cooled down enough that I'm ready for the break off. You'll see there's not a lot of heat left in the moil. It's not moving too much. I'm doing the same exact kind of break off that we do for paperweights, where we run that butter knife along at least one full rotation around the entire jack line, cooling it down, stressing it out, and then we're breaking it off on the side. You never want to break off a bird on the tail or the beak, since those are the weakest points and the points most likely to be stressed out just due to air temperature differentials. You'll give a quick flash to the tail and to the beak, once again to get some heat back in there, and then you can also either stamp it or you can just press it flat with a butter knife after fire polishing it. You'll see I kind of every now and then will go back to the tail or the beak just to make sure it keeps some heat, and then I really start heating up that jack line point. I had a fair amount of heat left in the bird already, so I don't need to be on there with the torch as long as I could, but I'm going to make sure to get it super hot before I press in the stamp. I'm making sure to press straight down as much as I can, and then, right there and then, we have our bird. I'm going to pick it up with the tongs, and then I will bring it straight over to the annealer. There's a couple different variations that you can do with birds. You can use crimps on the tail. You can also pull it out in different ways, but those are my two preferences for how to pull out the tail and how to shape the neck. With that, once again, I encourage you to try it out, see which way feels best for you, and happy glass blowing!